TEPSA Talk, the podcast where leaders inspire, share, and grow together. TEPSA is dedicated to celebrating the incredible work happening in education. Each episode, we dive into meaningful conversations with leaders, changemakers, and innovators who are shaping the future of our schools. Whether you're looking for fresh ideas, encouragement, or a little spark to fuel your passion, TEPSA Talk is here for you. Imagine tuning in to hear how leaders are revolutionizing their schools, tackling challenges head-on, and fostering a culture of collaboration. Grab a coffee, hit play, and let's grow together. Welcome to TEPSA Talk.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another all-new episode. My name is Todd Nesloney, and I am the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. We are thrilled to bring you different leaders around the world every week, and this week, we've got a brand new guest, and that is Kim Strobel. Kim, thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody who you are.
Oh, thank you, Todd, for the introduction. So I'm a former fourth grade teacher, and then I was a school leader, curriculum director. And then I'm also studied this topic of happiness for the last 20 years, kind of because of my own struggles. And so I started Strobel Education, and we provide a lot of professional development. And honestly, my lane is keynote speaking now because it's the number one thing that fires me up. And my number one topic that I teach is the science of happiness. I tell everybody I took 21 flights in the month of August alone, and 20 of the 21 were to talk about happiness.
I love it. Well, Kim, I know in education, this is a topic that is incredibly important because all of us, no matter what our role is in education right now, are dealing with protecting our well-being, finding ways to remain happy even in the midst of the overwhelming burdens that happen in education. And I know this conversation today also going to talk about how also protecting that outside of the workplace, because it's not all about what happens at work. But let's start with the work side. So, education is bombarded left and right by all kinds of new initiatives, expectations, and now just that whole idea of filters being removed from all sorts of armchair experts. So, as a school administrator or as a school educator, where do I even begin in protecting my well-being when it feels like I don't have any extra space for anything else?
Well, and I think those are the downloaded constructs that we've been given by well-meaning people, our parents, our grandparents, that it's put the head to the grindstone, do the work, and you don't leave until the work is done. And especially when you're in education where it feels like there's this platter and there's just more and more and more piled on. And here's what I tell people, Todd. I feel like, the education system, let's just be honest, it is out of control at times. The expectations are unbelievable. The cognitive demand, which means there's literally not enough time in the day to get done what is expected of us. And so that leaves us feeling defeated every single time I feel like we leave our buildings. And then we go home and we really have nothing left for the other important parts of our life, like our physical health and our family and our own children. And I think that over the years, we've got this download that says this is how you get ahead in life and this is what you do to get ahead, which means you don't stop until you've finished everything that you need. But we actually have to understand the mindset behind all of this and the behaviors and the habits that actually tell a very different story. And I always say, 80% of the time, Todd, before I get announced to come out on the stage and it's like, happiness, give me a break. Is she going to come out here and be some kind of cheerleader and preach toxic positivity? Like there's nothing I have to learn from this woman. And I will tell you that within the first 5 minutes, Todd, I have them hooked because the bottom line is the research is so strong around our well-being that when we make these teeny tiny shifts, we actually become so much better at our jobs, but also we learn to create space in our lives for the other important parts of our lives. And I'll give you an example real quickly. So one of the things that, and you'll be all over this because you're the guru of climate and culture, and you hear this word positivity all of the time. But I've studied the neuroscience of the brain for 20 years. And when we teach employees to get their brains to positive more than negative, neutral, or stressed, what we see across the board is that employees who are at positive are 31% more productive in their job.
Wow.
Not only are they 31% more productive, but they are 10 times more engaged. And so I have this talk all of the time with school leaders. Look, we've got to call the elephant in the room an elephant, because the bottom line is I get it. There feels like there's no breathable space. I remember feeling that way too. But when you actually learn to create some boundaries behind the scenes, when you learn to do things a little bit differently, a person will be surprised that as them showing up to work day in and day out, it is a different version, because they've learned how to get their brain to positive more than negative, neutral, or stressed by cultivating very simplistic habits. And so it fires me up, because I see this happening all of the time. And I see people who are like, I don't know, but I'm going to give this a chance. And then I have school administrators, emailing me and saying, I cannot believe, Kim, that this has worked for me.
Well, there's a couple things you said there that I think really resonated with me. And I love that you used a term that I think we don't talk about enough in education, especially in school leadership. And you said toxic positivity. I love that, because I think sometimes we get caught up in this mindset that, oh, I'm a school leader, I have to say, don't forget your why, and you should da-da-da-da-da. And what that does to educators is they're like, oh my God, that does not make me feel any more positive. And it's that whole fake positivity thing. But you said, there's a lot of little shifts we can take. So if I'm listening to this today and I'm thinking, okay, Kim, I want to start being positive, but like all I can see are the negatives. Like, I don't even know where to begin. For those people feeling totally broken or totally lost on where to start, where is an easy entry point for them to even begin the shift into having more positivity so they can be more productive?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Todd, which is we don't talk about the hard stuff enough in education. And sometimes our teachers just need to hear, you know what, this has been a really bad day for me. Like I barely made it through, and I'm feeling really negative today about my job. Like, can we just be more honest? That's what people want. And so what I'm saying is, like, let's not just preach all the good stuff. Let's also talk about the hard, because when we acknowledge that, then we can begin to pivot to the good. But we first have to make our way through the hard. So I really love that you're somebody who understands the effects that toxic positivity can have on a school culture.
Well, I want to dive in here too and say too that when Kim and I are talking about this and talking about sharing that hard, I think there is a line too between negative complaining and sharing honestly. And I know Kim agrees with me with this, because there is a line, and I've been in rooms where I am totally resonating with what somebody's sharing with, because it's honest, it's from the heart, and it's just spitting it out so we can move forward. Whereas then other people are like, oh no, I'm here to just complain. I'm not looking to move forward. I just want to be negative. So I think we want to be clear with those who are listening. There is a difference between just sharing all the bad stuff with no intention of moving forward and sharing it in the hopes of this is me being vulnerable and real. How do we move through this?
Exactly. And that is the pivot point, Todd. And I love that. And, I always say, like, I don't know that we can control the education system. So I never focus on that with schools. I'm not going to focus on all of the uncontrollables. I only want to focus on how you operate in this system, because when you realize you are the only person you have control over, the game changes. You ease a lot of suffering for yourself, rather than when you're in that darkness, in that muck, in that victimhood mode. And we don't want to stay in we got people in victimhood mode all the time. We don't want to stay there. But to go back to your question, the happiness research actually says that we all have what's called a set baseline happiness level, Todd. So maybe my baseline is here and maybe yours is a little bit higher. And so good things happen to us in our lives, Todd. Maybe we get a new job, or our kids get into the best college, or just something good happens and our happiness level increases, it goes up. But it's always going to come right back to your baseline. Mm-hmm. And the same is true for when we endure negative, hard things. Our happiness levels dip, but we will recalibrate. And so then the question becomes, okay, well, why is Todd's baseline happiness level higher than mine?
Yeah.
So if you think of your happiness as a pie chart, what we know is that 50% of your happiness is genetic. It comes from your mom or dad, or a mixture of both. And Todd, when I tell this, 80% of the heads in the crowd drop and they think, I am so screwed.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, oh, great. Okay, that explains some things.
And I'm a believer in epigenetics, which is a whole nother conversation, which tells me that you are not your genes, that you're whether or not you turn on those genes. But the research is pretty clear right now. 50% is genetic, but where it gets really interesting is that we can take every external circumstance, Todd, that you've ever had in your whole life, that you have right now. What kind of job do you have? What kind of money do you make? What kind of childhood did you have? Are you married, single, divorced, or widowed? All of these things can be thrown into the pie. And the research says over and over again that it only accounts for about 10% of our long-term happiness.
Wow.
But if you're like Kim Strobel or Todd, you let some people in some circumstances steal way more than 10% for far too long.
Yep.
Right? So then if we've got 50% genetics, 10% external circumstances, that leaves 40% of the pie. And what we know as human beings, Todd, is that every human being can increase their happiness levels by up to 40%.
Uh-huh.
And that 40% has to do with the thoughts you're thinking, the actions you are taking in your life, and the behaviors or the habits that are embedded in your life. And that's the piece I choose to focus on because that's the game changer right there. That's where you take your power back. Yeah. And so you say, okay, Kim, can you give us one little teeny tiny habit that would help us? And I say, absolutely. It's why I wrote the book, Teach Happy, because this is the blueprint for how to work on that 40%. But I'm going to give you one teeny tiny one, Todd, just one 2-minute daily practice that I will promise you, it will change your life. We've heard about it. Oprah's preached it. It's the practice of gratitude. But if you're like me, you got to know why it works before you're going to do it. And so what we know is that as humans, we have about 70,000 thoughts a day, 70,000. And for the average human, 80% of those thoughts in a day's time are negative. Mm-hmm. Which means when you and I put our head down on the pillow at night, we've had 56,000 negative thoughts. And most of them are running in the subconscious part of our brain, which means they just recycle day in and day out because 95% of the 80% of negative thoughts that you have are the exact same thoughts you had the day before. So the research is so clear that when you simply adopt a 2-minute daily practice where you write down 3 different things you are thankful for every single day, that somewhere between days 21 and 30, we actually begin to create a new neural feedback loop in your brain. So rather than your brain loop going down this way and seeing all the negatives of your job or all the negatives of your life or all the frustrations of your spouse, you start to redirect the neuroplasticity of your brain and those neural feedback loops. And the reason being is that then that's how we begin to shift our culture to one of more positive, because your brain is then scanning for more good than more bad.
I love that.
So, and I have a free gratitude tracker and prompt that I'll email it to you, Todd. If anybody wants to click on the link, they can download that gratitude prompt, which is going to get them looking for gratitude in their lives. But I tell people, I ran a very high-end women's coaching program years ago, 90 days, $5,000. And at the end, I would say, what is the number one thing that changed your life? And I thought for sure it would be all these fantastic videos I did, Todd. Every time it was, I cannot believe how the gratitude practice changed my life.
I love that. But I love too, and I hope people heard this, that one of the things you said in there is around day 21 to 30. And I think that's so important to be reminded of is when we do some of these shifts, though they are simple, though they are small, the change doesn't happen immediately. It takes time, and it takes us being committed during that time. So it's not I did a couple days of gratitude and look, there has been no change. And it's like, it's right. Our brain is complex. It takes time. It doesn't just happen in a couple days. It may take 21 to 30 days for that shift to happen. But I think for me, I listen to this and I go, but if I'm that committed to feeling better, to feeling different than the cycle that I've been in, what pain is 21 to 30 days
2 minutes a
compared to
day.
what I've been going through just trying to hold it together? So I love that, Kim. Okay, now, as we begin to wrap this conversation up, though, I kind of want to hear your definition on something. Because as I'm hearing you talk about this, I think when I'm thinking to some of my friends and some of the people that I've worked with and continue to work with, I think we all might define happiness a little bit differently. So what is your definition of happiness?
I think that's a great question, because the other thing is, Todd, is we are all a mixture of happy and unhappy every day. Like, I got up this morning and I was so fired up to start my week. I was so excited, and I was like buzzing around, playing with my dogs, feeling good, got my protein shake in, did my gratitude journal, wrote my affirmations, did my exercise. And then I got an email that just plummeted me, right? Like, oh my gosh, this is another roadblock. Like, I'm stressed. I'm like, my chest hurts. And so, like, we are all a mixture of happy and unhappy every single day. But the other thing is realizing it's not that you arrive at happiness. It's not like happiness is the final destination and Kim is finally a happy person. That is unrealistic. What I focus on, Todd, is that we can all get happier. We can all get happier more of the time. You're always going to have the full range of emotions. Thank goodness for those. But what I know, and the other thing, Todd, I want to say is, the reason I'm so hooked on happiness is because, believe it or not, it's not the formula of work really hard, get really good grades, work even harder, get a good job, climb the ladder of success, make the money, get the big home, get the nice vehicles. And you jump through all these hoops, which I love. I'm a goal setter. I love jumping through hoops. There's nothing wrong with having goals. But the problem is we're fed this formula that says once you do all of these things, now you've arrived at happiness. And the research from Sean Aker says the opposite to be true, Todd, that when you learn to put your happiness at the forefront of your life, that then shifts the lever in every area of your life. It shifts your relationships. It shifts your marriage. It shifts your parenting. It shifts your success. It shifts your abundance. And I will tell you, I am somebody who's experienced that. I am somebody who felt like I had explosions all around me. I had great darkness and suffering in my life at one time. I always say I'm the girl that struggled with a significant anxiety disorder that left me agoraphobic in my home, unable to walk to my mailbox or drive my car 5 minutes to work. And, now I'm the girl that steps on a stage with 6,000 people and does the number one fear that most normal brains have, Todd.
Right.
I know I do not have a normal brain. And so what I really want to teach people is, if you want success in your life, let me teach you how to create more happiness first. And then you see that internal blueprint changes and you become more successful in every area of your life more of the time.
I love it. Okay, Kim, this has been a fantastic conversation, but I know that you've got a ton to share on this. You've got a book. You've also got a website, some other information. So if people want to continue to learn from you, or if they want to reach out to you for information about, hey, Kim, you're speaking my language, I need you to come speak to my team, or whatever it is, tell us how we can connect more with you.
Yeah, so the easiest way to find me is strobeleducation.com. That is the name of my company. And on there, you'll even see a tab for the book. The book is called Teach Happy, Small Steps to Big Joy. And if you click on that link, there's actually a downloadable study guide so that administrators can actually have a study guide if they want to create like the Teach Happy movement in their schools, which, Todd, I can just see you and I pinging back and forth, because like, this is your love language. This is absolutely what you do. But I'm just on a mission, because I honestly believe that we can become happy in this profession a lot more of the time. I believe, and I lead with hope in that.
I love it. Well, Kim, thank you so much for being a guest on our TEPSA Talk podcast. We can't wait to learn from you more and connect with you deeper. Thank you, everybody, for joining another episode. Remember, you can check out all the past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your stuff. It's there. As a pre-K through 8th grade organization for school leaders in Texas, we hope that if you are not a member, you consider joining today. And don't forget, our summer conference is coming up June 10th through 12th at the Kalahari in Round Rock, Texas. Registration opens soon, so be on the lookout. We'll see you soon.